How would you react if a stray dog began following you and refused to leave your side? Would you brush it off or would you stop and ask why? That's exactly the question Officer John found himself facing. After wrapping up a long, grueling shift, all he wanted was to go home and rest. But as he walked the quiet, deserted streets, he noticed a small, scruffy dog trotting close behind, matching his every step. At first, he figured it was just another stray, until he caught the desperate urgency in its eyes. He knelt to check for a collar, more out of habit than hope. What he found made his blood run cold. Tucked beneath the worn leather was a crumpled note. He unfolded it slowly, his pulse quickening with every word scrawled in shaky, childlike handwriting. My brother is sick. No food, no water. Please help. Apartment 3B. In a heartbeat, exhaustion gave way to adrenaline. The dog's wide, imploring eyes met his, urging him forward. Somebody needed help. A kid, alone. John straightened, every instinct on high alert. He slid the note into his pocket, scanning the dark street. The dog gave a soft whine and turned, trotting purposefully ahead like it knew the way. This wasn't just another welfare check. He felt it in his gut. When he reached the rundown apartment complex, dread curled in his stomach. The flickering streetlights, the rusted gate barely hanging on its hinges. It all screamed something's wrong. Apartment 3B. John knocked, firm and sharp. Nothing. He knocked again, harder. Still silence. Thick, unnerving silence. The kind that hangs too heavy in the air. The dog scratched at the door and whined, ears alert. John's pulse pounded. Every part of him screamed, something's wrong. Move. He stepped back and slammed his shoulder against the door. The cheap wood gave way with a loud crack. The smell hit him like a wall, stale air, spoiled food, mildew, and something more sinister. His flashlight cut through the dimness. The scene was bleak. Peeling wallpaper, scattered trash, a chair on its side, and in one corner, a small pile of dirty blankets. And then he saw them. A boy no older than 8 curled protectively around a baby. John froze, breath caught in his chest. The child wasn't just thin, he was skeletal. His sunken cheeks and oversized clothes told a story of slow starvation. His cracked lips quivered, arms wrapped tighter around the limp infant beside him. The baby barely moved. Only the shallow rise and fall of his tiny chest confirmed he was alive. John crouched slowly, voice calm and steady. Hey kid, I'm Officer John. I'm here to help. The boy flinched, eyes wild, body trembling. How long had they been here? Alone, hungry, scared? John swallowed hard. He had to act now. The baby's breathing was faint, too faint. His skin was pale, clammy, dangerously sick. The older boy, his brother, clearly, clutched him tighter, as if letting go meant losing him forever. John kept his voice low. Hey buddy, your brother needs a doctor. We need to go. Okay? The boy's grip only tightened. Mistrust flared in his eyes. Too much fear. Too much time spent surviving alone. John tried again, softer this time. I promise. I'm not going to let anything bad happen to you. I swear. A long pause. Then a tiny nod. Barely there, but it was enough. Quick pause before we continue. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. It really helps. Thank you. John gently gathered the baby into his arms, startled by how light he was. Fragile, weak, so small. The boy clung to John's jacket, fists gripping the fabric like it was his last thread of safety. The little dog barked once, then darted ahead, leading them back down the crumbling stairs. Outside, John called for an ambulance, voice tight, eyes scanning the dark. Sirens began to wail in the distance. The boy's fingers twisted into John's sleeve. His breath hitched. You're safe now, John whispered. But as he looked down at the baby's pale face, he knew the truth. This fight wasn't over yet. At the hospital, John sat beside the boy, Ethan, in the sterile waiting room. His leg bounced, nerves raw. He'd seen neglect before. He'd seen worse. But something about this boy, this night, it stuck deep. Ethan sat stiffly, small hands clenched into fists in his lap. His clothes hung from his thin frame like hand-me-downs 2 sizes too big. His sneakers were torn, holes in the toes. John couldn't stop wondering. How long had this kid been holding it all together? He exhaled slowly. "What's your name?" The boy hesitated. His voice, when it came, was barely audible. "Ethan." John gave a slow nod, voice still gentle. "And your brother?" "Gabriel, the baby, the one who'd barely been breathing when John first found them." John clenched his jaw, trying to steady the surge of emotion rising in his chest. "Where are your parents, Ethan?" The boy's small shoulders hunched inward, as if expecting pain just from the question. His lips parted, then trembled. He swallowed, and when he finally spoke, it was so soft John had to lean in to hear it. "They left." John felt something burn in his throat. Rage, grafter Eve, all of it. Ethan didn't lift his head. "A few weeks ago," he mumbled, voice hollow. "They said they'd come back, but—" His voice cracked, and he sucked in a breath through his teeth, blinking hard. "But they never did." Weeks, an 8-year-old, alone, caring for an infant. No help, no food, no water, no one. John's hands curled into fists at his sides. "Did they leave you anything?" Ethan hesitated, then gave a tiny shake of his head. "Just a note." There was nothing in his voice now. No anger, no sadness, just empty space. "They said they'd find help, that I had to stay strong." John breathed out sharply, barely containing the fire inside him. Stay strong. That wasn't love. That was abandonment. He knelt down, placing a hand gently on Ethan's shoulder. "You don't have to do this alone anymore." Ethan didn't respond at first, but after a long pause, agonizing and silent, his fingers began to loosen, just slightly, maybe for the first time in a long while. He believed someone might stay. John never imagined himself as a guardian, never pictured late-night feedings or bedtime stories. But after that night, after seeing what Ethan and Gabriel had survived, there was no way he was letting them return to uncertainty. They were placed into emergency foster care. On paper, it was the right process, but in John's gut, it felt wrong. 2 frightened kids, a strange house, a system that too often failed the most fragile. So he made some calls, filled out forms, skipped sleep, and did something he never thought he would. He brought them home. His apartment was no place for kids. Not yet, but he adapted. A crib in the spare room for Gabriel, a fold-out couch made into a bed for Ethan, blankets, night lights, quiet reassurance. That first night, Ethan said nothing, just sat curled on the couch, arms wrapped around Charlie, the scruffy little dog who refused to leave his side. The next morning, John tried to make pancakes. The smoke alarm went off. He waved a towel, coughing, while Ethan hid behind his hands, until John caught the faintest flicker of a smile. "Do you cook like this every day?" Ethan muttered. John groaned, mock offended. "Hey, I'm trying to impress my guests." Ethan shook his head, almost smiling now. Charlie barked once and happily devoured a burnt pancake off the floor. And for the first time, John heard Ethan laugh. Weeks passed. Ethan remained quiet, cautious, but there were signs. He stopped jumping at loud noises, started helping without being asked, trusted the silence between moments. Then came the knock. John opened the door to see a woman, pale, disheveled, eyes sunken from something darker than exhaustion. "Where are my kids?" she rasped. "I came back for them." Ethan froze. His eyes didn't widen. His mouth didn't move, but his fists clenched tight, nails digging into skin. John stepped forward, protective. "You left them," he said firmly. "Alone, for weeks, no food, no water." Tears filled her eyes, whether from guilt or something else, John couldn't tell. "I was trying to fix things," she whispered. "I didn't mean to." But Ethan's voice broke through, soft, unyielding. "You weren't going to come back." She flinched. He stepped behind John, and that was all the answer John needed. He looked her dead in the eyes. "You need to leave." Her lips parted, ready to argue, but then she turned and walked away. That night, Ethan didn't say much, but as John tucked him in, the boy whispered into the dim room, "She wasn't going to stay, was she?" John sat beside him for a long, quiet moment before answering. No, buddy, she wasn't. After she left for good, John sat in his truck, hands gripping the steering wheel, white-knuckled. Not with anger, not even frustration, just fatigue, the kind that sank into his bones. Tired of watching kids be forgotten. Tired of broken promises and abandoned hopes. Tired of a world where children were left behind. But Ethan still hoped. Even after everything, some part of him still waited, still watched the door, still wondered if this time someone would stay. John glanced down at the stack of paperwork on the seat beside him. Adoption forms, his name, their names. He didn't need to think about it, didn't need to weigh pros and cons. This wasn't a decision, it was a promise. A promise that Ethan and Gabriel would never be alone again, that no one would ever walk away from them in the dark. That they'd be his always. That night, across the kitchen table, John laid the papers out in front of Ethan. The silence was thick, not uncomfortable, just full of everything they couldn't quite say. John cleared his throat. I've been thinking, he said slowly. What if we made this official? Ethan stiffened. He stared at the papers, at the bold letters and strange legal terms. His fingers twisted in his sleeves. Knuckles. White. His whole life had been temporary. Shelters, strangers, false promises. And now here was something different, something real. His voice, when it came, was barely a breath. But his hand reached forward and pulled the papers close. You really want to keep us? The words were barely more than a whisper, but they hit John like a tidal wave. That one question, fragile and trembling, held all of Ethan's fear. All the years he'd spent waiting for someone to stay. John's throat tightened. His chest ached with a feeling too big to name. But his answer came without pause. More than anything. Ethan looked up, eyes searching John's face for a crack, for a shadow of uncertainty, a hint of hesitation. But there was none. John's gaze held steady, steady and strong and sure. And then Ethan nodded, a small, simple motion, but it carried the weight of everything he'd been holding in, everything he'd been afraid to hope for. Then he moved, suddenly, desperately, and threw his arms around John. His thin frame trembled as he clung to John's shirt like a lifeline.
No walls, no defenses.
Just a child letting go for the first time in a very long time. He didn't have to be strong anymore. He was home. And John understood then what it truly meant to be a father. The day the adoption was finalized, Ethan never let go of John's sleeve. In the courtroom, when the judge asked the question, "Do you want Officer John to be your father?" Ethan didn't hesitate. His voice was clear, certain. Yes. John signed the papers with a hand that only barely shook, sealing what they already knew to be true. They were a family. That night, the apartment buzzed with life. Charlie barked and skidded across the kitchen floor, chasing a runaway meatball. Gabriel squealed in his high chair, clapping his hands and giggling. And Ethan sat at the table, grinning freely, warmth blooming in his face like sunlight breaking through a long storm. John placed a plate in front of him with a dramatic flourish. "Tonight we celebrate." Ethan arched an eyebrow, twirling spaghetti around his fork. "You sure you didn't burn anything this time?" John feigned insult. "Excuse me, I'm basically a gourmet chef now." "Aha!" Ethan replied deadpan. Gabriel shrieked with laughter as Charlie tried to sneak food off his tray. And Ethan's laughter, light and unguarded, filled the room. John leaned back and watched it all unfold. The mess, the joy, the noise, the chaos of something real. For the first time in years, Ethan wasn't bracing for what came next. He was safe. That night, the house fell quiet. Gabriel slept peacefully in his crib, little fists curled up near his cheeks. Charlie was nestled at the foot of Ethan's bed, gently snoring. John tucked Ethan in, smoothing the blanket over his shoulders. A quiet routine, familiar now, reassuring. "Good night, buddy," John said, turning toward the door. He was almost out of the room when he heard it. "Dad." The word was soft, hesitant, like it had taken everything inside Ethan to say it. John froze. The silence stretched, heavy with meaning. He turned slowly. Ethan was staring at the ceiling, his fingers gripping the edge of his blanket like he wasn't sure if he'd gone too far, like he was afraid of what would happen next. John's voice was barely above a whisper. "Yeah." Ethan exhaled long and slow, his fingers relaxed, and then in the smallest voice, "Good night, Dad." Something cracked open in John's chest, something deep and fragile and forever. He crossed the room again, sat on the edge of the bed, and ran a hand gently through Ethan's hair. "Good night, kiddo." Ethan didn't flinch, didn't pull away. He just let out a soft breath and let go. And for the first time, he truly believed he was loved. John saw it in the way Ethan's shoulders eased, in the way his eyes closed without fear, and he knew with everything he had, he'd never let him doubt it again.